Republican members of Congress who lived through the attack personally that day are actively trying to rewrite the history of that day as a peaceful protest.
Well, it's definitely revisionist history, and it's crazy in my opinion. I mean, everybody saw exactly what happened, and I was in the middle of that, as you say. We were getting desperate calls from the leaders of Congress who were under attack.
Hello and welcome to History in 10 Minutes, a channel where we talk about history in under 10 minutes. So this week what I want to do is look at the concept of revisionism. What does this term mean? How is it widely understood? And by contrast, what do historians mean by this term? So the idea of revisionism has something of a negative reputation. It's usually associated with someone who is attempting to maliciously rewrite history for the benefit of some political cause in the present. So, as we saw in the clips before, this has become a particularly important news story over the last 6 months or so, as the Republican Party in the United States of America has attempted to shift the narrative regarding the riots or insurrection on the United States Capitol. One of the right-wing talking points which emerged out of this process was the idea that it wasn't in fact Trump supporters who led the attack on the Capitol, but in fact that it was a false flag operation, one which was run by Democrats, Black Lives Matter or Antifa. Yet in reality, as numerous investigations have shown, it was in fact Trump supporters who were operating under the delusion that an illegal process had taken place. And one of the things that many members of the Congressional Republican Party and indeed the Senate Republican Party have done is to claim that in fact these people weren't rioters at all, they were engaged in peaceful protest. And of course we can see the evidence for that with our own eyes. In fact, some lawmakers even went as far as to say that these were just ordinary tourists queuing up as they would on any normal day, waiting within the normal lines behind the ropes. But of course we know that this is not the case. That wasn't what happened on the day. So one of the charges that the Democrats have come out with, and also some Republicans, including the Republican governor of Maryland, Larry Hogan, is that the Republicans in Congress and in the Senate have been engaged in what we might call revisionist history, attempting to rewrite the recent past for political motive in a way that is malicious, in a way that is a lie, in a way which distorts what we all saw, a form of historical gaslighting for political purposes. But is this what the term revision means if we are thinking historically? And where does this idea that revisionism is somehow a negative thing come from? So a really famous example of this would be of the Stalinist regime in the Soviet Union. So Nikolai Yezhov, who was the head of the NKVD, the Soviet secret police under Joseph Stalin from 1936 to 1938, was eventually purged himself by the regime. And once he was arrested and eventually executed, he was removed as having ever really been associated with Stalin. And a really great example of this is the image you can see on the screen at the moment. Yezhov had been photographed walking alongside Stalin, and then later an image, that photograph, was touched up to remove him from that picture. And that, I think, is what a lot of people mean when they think of revisionism, some form of nefarious historical rewriting of the past. So, one thing I don't want to do, however, is to suggest that this idea that revisionism is a negative idea is a foolish one. There is actually a very good reason why revisionism has been painted as this kind of problematic attempt to dishonestly rewrite the past. And I'm afraid to say that the answer is because of racism, because of white nationalism, because of neo-Nazism, and because of anti-Semitism. And in this case, anti-Semitism and racism in the form of Holocaust denial. So if Holocaust denial appears with people brandishing swastikas with skinheads saying that the whole idea is a Jewish hoax designed to lead to the creation of the State of Israel, then that's fairly easy to spot. However, for those who would purport that the Holocaust didn't take place, appearing to be stereotypical Nazis with your skinheads doesn't really look all that great. It doesn't look to be particularly compelling. So instead they've attempted to change their image to look more professional, to look like serious historians and scientists and scholars merely asking questions. Yet the reality is that the evidence for the Holocaust is overwhelming. There has been never a subject in history as in the study of the past, which has generated as much research as the Holocaust, or as many historians and various other academics and scholars and scientists looking into its veracity and how it took place. We know that it happened. The evidence is overwhelming. So in order to try to cast doubt over the veracity of these events, these Holocaust deniers have attempted to make themselves look more professional, to take on the guise of legitimate scholars asking legitimate questions. And they've done this by making their work appear to be scholarly in nature, and they produce their own journals and books which are designed to look like legitimate academic and scientific scholarship. But the point is, they're not. It's a masquerade. The reality is that their work is bogus. And let's look at some examples of this in reality. One of the key examples of this is the Institute for Historical Review, founded in 1978. And this is a grand and legitimate sounding name for an historical organisation, right? It might reasonably be compared to the names of other organisations like the Institute for Historical Research in London. And on its website, the Institute for Historical Review describes itself as an independent educational centre and publisher that works to promote peace, understanding and justice through greater public awareness of the past and especially socially politically relevant aspects of modern history. In reality, the Institute for Historical Review exists to promote anti-Semitism and has been described by the Southern Poverty Law Centre as a pseudo-academic organisation that claims to seek truth and accuracy in history, but whose real purpose is to promote Holocaust denial and defend Nazism. The Institute for Historical Review also publishes its own journal, pumping out misinformation designed to muddy the waters and sow seeds of doubt regarding Nazism and the Holocaust. This journal was called the Journal of Historical Review, and it ran from 1980 to around 2002. In its opening edition and opening article in Volume 1, Number 1, the journal ran an article by Arthur R. Butts entitled The International Holocaust Controversy, which sounds pretty anodyne, right? However, the article actually says, if you read it, that the Holocaust was a hoax, and he described himself and those who shared his views as revisionists. And if you actually look at the journal which we have on the page here, you can see that it flags up, for example, the credentials of the individuals involved. So if you look at the editors, you see doctor here and there. You look at various different universities listed. But if you actually drill into this, very few of them were actually involved in, for example, history. Arthur Butts, for example, was an associate professor of electrical engineering at Northwestern University. So not an historian at all, or really a person with any expertise that would be relevant to this subject. Yet that's what he chose to write about, and as you can see, this is all designed to look scholarly and professional, when in fact it is nothing of the sort. So when I said before that there's a good reason why people associate revisionism with telling lies about the past, it's because people like this describe themselves as having reviewed history. They call themselves revisionist. So this idea that revisionism is something bad, something associated with lies, is very much because these people attempted to legitimise themselves by linking themselves to a technical historiographical sounding term like revisionism. But what does revisionism actually mean to professional historians? Well, basically it's any change to the historical record or historiography which has been written by historians. If we think about it for even a moment, why would an historian want to write anything? If we already knew everything there was to know, we wouldn't need to say anything. It'd already be there. There'd be no need to change it. So all history which is written by historians is by definition a form of revisionism. To be more technical, there's usually an orthodox historiography, something which has been agreed upon by historians up to a certain point, but then new methods and new sources lead historians to think, well, actually, maybe there's something more to say about this, and they create a revision to the existing orthodoxy. And that's basically it. That's what the term revisionism means. Okay, so I hope you found this video enjoyable and that it's helped you understand the term revisionism. And so if you liked it, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.